The Legend of the Black Gold and the Phantom City. It wasn't cotton, it wasn't cattle, it wasn't even the assassination of a president that truly defined Dallas. The secret ingredient, the one that turned a dusty, insignificant trading post on a mosquito-ridden river into a shimmering beacon of glass and wealth, was a single, audacious lie. A lie told by railroad barons, an illusion of industrial might, and the stubborn will of a handful of men who believed they could conjure a metropolis out of sheer ambition. This is the real story of Dallas, a city built on a myth of convenience, a fever dream fueled by black gold, and an enduring shadow of fate cast by a dark day in November. The river, the Trinity, was less a waterway and more a temperamental serpent, bone dry one day, a raging, destructive torrent the next. When settler John Neely Bryan staked his claim in 1841, establishing a small cabin near the Three Forks area, he was doing little more than planting a flag in the middle of nowhere. It was land, suited for cotton maybe, or cattle grazing, but certainly not the foundation of a great.
When the T&P track arrived in 1873, it was a double victory. The city suddenly became the nexus for regional trade, and more importantly, Fort Worth lost its economic advantage. Dallas had stolen its destiny. This single act of collective municipal deception cemented the Dallas spirit: ambition over reality, image over substance, and the relentless pursuit of the deal. The railroads meant people, and people meant commerce. Lawyers, insurance men, retailers, and bankers flooded in, establishing a distinct white-collar character that contrasted sharply with Fort Worth's blue-collar, cattle and oil grit. The city became the major inland cotton market, but its true engine was finance. Dallas wasn't about extracting resources, it was about managing the money of the people who did. Then, at the turn of the century, the true catalyst arrived: oil. Not in Dallas, but in Spindletop, 300 miles away. As vast reserves of crude oil were discovered across the state, Bournemouth, Midland, and Odessa, Dallas became the de facto headquarters of the Texas petroleum industry. Why? Because the city had the most sophisticated banking and insurance infrastructure in the Southwest. The oilmen might have drilled in Houston or Midland, but they came to Dallas to secure their loans, incorporate their companies, and buy their liability insurance. The wealth flowed like a pipeline directly into the city's coffers, financing the creation of the magnificent early skyscrapers like the Magnolia Building, with its iconic flying Pegasus, which literally lit up the night sky, a monument to unchecked prosperity. But prosperity brought its own set of problems, and one of the most astonishing was Dallas's relentless battle.
This brings us to Dealey Plaza. Dealey Plaza was originally the gateway to the west. It was the location of John Neely Bryan's original cabin site. It was a triangle of green space dedicated to George B. Dealey, a publisher of the Dallas Morning News. Crucially, the city planners who designed the route for the president's motorcade in November 1963 chose the path that took the limousine off the main downtown street, Main Street, and directed it onto Elm Street. Elm Street, at this specific location, curved sharply down and under the triple underpass, the route out of the city center and toward the Trade Mart for the luncheon. The entire curve of Elm Street, the grassy knoll, the Texas Book Depository, and the triple underpass were all the physical, unintended products of a century of Dallas's historical choices. The railroads, the T&P Railway, secured by the Great Railway Con, ran right through the area, requiring the elaborate triple underpass to handle the road traffic. The Trinity River Project, the massive, desolate, open space and low-slung industrial buildings like the Book Depository were remnants of the engineered floodplain. The Dealey Memorial, the very plaza, was an early 20th century beautification effort by the powerful local press.
In short, the precise geographical choke point where President Kennedy's motorcade had to slow to a near crawl was not random. It was a man-made canyon, the final, fatal expression of Dallas's relentless, ambitious, and sometimes short-sighted urban development. The city's greatest victory, the railroad junction, created the perfect funnel for its greatest tragedy. On November 22, 1963, when the shots rang out in that canyon of concrete and history, Dallas became, overnight, the city of hate. The sheer, relentless drive and ambition that had transformed a dusty trading post into a major financial center had culminated in a collective moment of shame. The city that built its reputation on an illusion of power had been exposed as tragically, fatefully vulnerable. The aftermath was astonishing. The power structure fought back immediately, not just with remorse, but with a renewed, almost frantic effort.
The Great Rail Race. The contest boiled down to two bitter rivals, separated by a single day's ride: Dallas and Fort Worth. Fort Worth, the scrappy cow town, was perfectly positioned on the old Chisholm Trail, the natural home for the burgeoning cattle industry. It was rougher, more frontier-spirited, and had the geographical advantage. State law mandated that the T&P line, pushing west, must pass through the town west of the 97th meridian. Fort Worth sat squarely on the west side. Dallas was irritatingly east of the official line. Dallas leaders, a collection of ambitious merchants, bankers, and land speculators, were not about to let geography dictate their fate. Their initial move, the legislative push to redraw the state's meridian line, failed spectacularly. The state capital laughed them off. So they pivoted to a strategy born of pure desperation and theatrical genius: the illusion of prosperity. The Phantom City. The T&P's scouting committee was scheduled to arrive in late 1872 to assess the viability of the competing terminus points. The Dallas elite, led by figures like Colonel William G. Sterrett and Benjamin Long, understood that the T&P cared less about existing resources and more about future traffic. They needed to convince the T&P that Dallas was not just an aspiration, but an already bustling industrial center that the railroad could not afford to bypass. Their plan was audacious: the facade factories. Teams of carpenters were hired to build dozens of large, boxy, false storefronts and warehouse facades along the proposed right-of-way. These structures had grand entrances, but mostly empty interiors. They were stage sets designed to look like thriving industries such as cotton gins, mills, and lumber yards. The workforce lie. They organized the local population, including every available farmer, laborer, and even school children, to participate in phantom shifts. When the T&P scouts arrived, crowds were strategically positioned, dressed in their work clothes, milling around the mock factories, pushing empty carts, and giving the appearance